my legs are already asleep. I already regret this decision and, you know, many of my other life choices. Hi guys, it's Leanne and welcome back. You're back, I'm back. The two people who religiously thumbs down every one of my videos in the first hour are back. Hi guys, how are you? How's your mum? Are your cats okay? Today we're doing a book haul, and I've played with the subtitle of this many times, but really this just needs to be subtitled as Leanne wasn't reading, therefore Leanne was depressed about not reading, therefore Leanne bought many books. Otherwise known as 2020 sucks and I want more books. Thank you. Okay, goodbye. There's just a huge mishmash here. There's like thrillers, there's middle grades, there's fantasy, there's non-fiction, there's everything. There's all of the books, all of the genres exist in this pile. So let's just crack on, shall we? Crack on. First of all, I am going to start with a little pile of books that I call the Inspired by Jean pile, because, you know, she's been responsible for a lot over the years since my lovely friend Jean. I mean, many purchases on these shelves, many days of bankruptcy have been Jean's fault. And this pile is just no exception. I paused there briefly just to make sure the camera was actually focused on my face and not like the gaps on my shelves where I have ripped books off for an unhaul, because that would have been sad. Mostly for me, not really for you. Okay. And of course we could not go any further in the Inspired by Jean pile until we had covered Jean's own book. Hiya! This is a book that Jean put all of the words in. Look, written by Jean Menzies and illustrated by Katie Ponder. For those of you who don't know, Jean is currently doing a PhD in classical literature, and so she was approached by DK and asked to put together something which would be appropriate for both children who were just getting into Greek myths and also adults who, like me, don't really know as much as they should do. Despite having studied some of it at university. This is a stunning primer, and I am so, it doesn't matter which page I flip to. Look, it doesn't matter. Although I think this is my favourite, just for the record, just look at this. I am so proud of her. It is so good. She has done amazingly, and you should all go and buy this and support her. This is non-spawn, she's just my friend and I love her. And I also have to say a big thank you to Victoria from What Victoria Read for buying this for me before I got a chance to do it myself. Thank you, girl. So the next book up that is the true fault of Jean is Mexican Gothic by Silvio Moreno Garcia. In fairness, I saw this cover and immediately put it on my wish list anyway, but then I heard Jean rave about it and I was like, I have to have it. Because this is a Gothic horror, so think creepy, think, ooh, what is that horrible feeling that it's making me feel, think I'm looking over my shoulder while I'm reading this book. That kind of horror. All of the blurbs for this say that it is essentially written for fans of Rebecca, so I'm in. This is set in Mexico in the 1950s and it is about Naomi. She is a pretty glamorous socialite, but she gets a letter desperately saying the following: "He is trying to poison me. You must come for me, Naomi. You have to save me." Naomi's cousin is also a socialite and has recently married a very wealthy and slightly mysterious man and is now living in his beautiful mansion, but clearly not all is quite as it seems. And so Naomi, being a person who is in the blurb of indomitable Look, she's really smart, okay, and she won't be pushed around, and she's strong. Okay, I have a first in English literature. Jeez, I'm so passionate, I keep popping. Okay, I'm very excited to read this book, and we'll probably be picking it up as soon as I put the camera down. Alright, okay. The next one is Girls of Paper and Fire. Jean sold this to me by saying that it is a YA fantasy sapphic romance, and I mean, realistically, say no more. However, then I read the blurb, and I mean, clearly saw this cover, but also read the blurb, and This book is about Leigh. She lives in a fantasy world which is operated through a caste system. She is the paper caste, which is the lowest in her society, and several years ago the palace guards came and took her mother away. She doesn't know where her mother went or what happened, but now they are back for Leigh, and they're specifically there because she is described as being very beautiful. The reason that they want very beautiful girls is because every year 8 girls are taken from all castes just off the street and are then taken to the palace and trained as king's consorts, as toys for the king. This year there are 9. Nobody has ever been chosen from the paper caste before, as far as Leigh knows. So she gets her head down and she tries to learn as much as she possibly can whilst also looking for a way out. And then love gets in the way. This is exactly what my brain needs right now. It needs page turning, it needs good fantasy, and it always needs sapphic romance, because... And the next one that Jean just forced me to pick up without knowing that I was doing it is actually a book that I've had on my wish list for a really long time. This came out in 2019 and I've had my eye on it since then, I'm not even gonna lie. And it is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmer. The reason that this has been on my wish list for so long is because this is actually a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I am an absolute sucker for. It is about Prince Ren, and he is stuck in this world of thorns that he has essentially created himself, and he is cursed to relive this autumn. I don't think reliving autumn every year to me would be a curse, but I'm, you know, just putting it out there. He's cursed, apparently, to relive the wonderful season of autumn again and again and again until he finds a girl who is actually willing to fall in love with him. Enter Harper. Harper is a pretty streetwise kid surviving in Washington DC against all of the odds, and she is accidentally sucked into his world, which just, it sold it for me right there. I don't need to go any further. Portal fantasy, you know how I feel about portal fantasies, so I am now just going to pick books off of this pile in order of closest to me on the floor. It's very scientific up in here. So the next book that we have got is Breakfast at Bronzefield by Sophie Campbell. This is a very difficult to see cover. I am terribly sorry for that. This is a non-fiction memoir about Sophie's experiences in Bronzefield prison, which is a prison in the UK in England. At the time of going into Bronzefield, Sophie was forced essentially to sign a non-disclosure agreement which said that she would not talk about any of her treatment or the inner workings of the prison, and she didn't think that that was okay. Not only because the treatment she'd received so far wasn't great, but because when she actually got into the prison, and as somebody with a lot of privilege, as a white former public school girl going into this prison, she witnessed a lot of stuff that she thought that the public needed to know about. So Sophie broke her non-disclosure agreement and she kept a secret diary, which is now Breakfast at Bronzefield. Sophie sent this proof to me herself. She is the sweetest person and I am so excited to read it. The next one that I have is a little step back into the horror genre, but it's also kind of a step into urban fantasy, but it's also kind of none of those things. Let me explain. This is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrick. When this book debuted, so many people sent me the blurb for it and were like, this is a Leanne book, you should buy it. And indeed, I think that they are probably right. For a start, this is a horror / urban fantasy book about a middle-aged woman. Thank you. Thank you. Finally, both of these genres have remembered that women actually have lives between, you know, 25 and 60. So nice of you to admit us to the club. This book is about Patricia Campbell. Her husband works too much and really doesn't care about anything else. Her teenagers are now up and out of the nest and have lives of their own, and the only thing that she really has that's truly her own is her book club. When walking home from her book club one day, she is randomly attacked by her elderly neighbour and is completely shaken by the experience, but luckily the elderly neighbour's nephew is on hand to save her. James is educated, He has travelled the world and he's very interested in Patricia for reasons that she can't quite put her finger on, but also doesn't really care about because he has brought so much into her very dull life. But then Patricia realises that maybe, just maybe, this guy is too good to be true, and I love this line on the bag. Patricia has reason to believe James Harris is more of a Bundy than a Brad Pitt. I'm assuming that vampire-y things happen, but to be honest I don't care because, like, that's enough to get me to read this book. Speaking of beautiful books, can we just talk about Winterhouse for a minute by Ben Gutterson? This is a stunning book. I would have picked this up just based on Chloe Bristol's illustrations all on its own, but thankfully I didn't have to pick it up at all because this was a gift from a lovely subscriber. Thank you very much, Jeanette. I really appreciate you sending me this. It has been on my wish list for a while because it is all about orphans and puzzles. It's just... it's a middle grade just written for me. It's just so lovely that so many of the authors in this pile have written books just specifically for me, right? This is about Elizabeth, who is an orphan, and she is sent to live with her aunt in the massive crumbling mansion of Winterhouse, which is actually also, to her surprise, a hotel. She is of course very anxious about coming to this crumbling structure in the middle of nowhere away from all civilization, but she is quickly charmed by the fact that it has a massive library. Girl after my own heart. However, when rummaging through this massive library, she finds a book that she probably shouldn't have found, and it tells a long and scary and slightly bloody history about Norbridge, and she decides that there are certain secrets that need to be told. Speaking of magical middle grade books, I actually have two more here to show you because I was a dum-dum. You know, sometimes when you see a pretty cover and then you read the blurb and you're like, oh my god, I want that, and you don't check which book is the first book in the series? Well, Leanne did that. Yeah, she did. And so the wonderful Simone from Me, Simone and I sent me the third book in this series, which actually starts with this one. So we're just going to talk about this one and pretend that Leanne is not dumb. Okay? Okay. This is the first book in the Curiosity House series by Lauren Oliver. I haven't read any other Lauren Oliver, but I do know that she has written middle grade, young adult, and I think a standalone creepy book for adults, so that sounds promising. And this book is also about 4 orphans. Are we shocked? No. Philippa and her friends live in the Curiosity House. It is a museum of oddities and freaks. It is a modern day freak show. None of the children are happy about having to show off their extraordinary talents or about being called freaks, but it is the only place that they have ever known any kind of safety. And then a new child enters the mix and sends ripples through the entire order of everything. At the same time, one of the museum's most treasured artifacts is stolen, and the 4 kids realise that if they don't get it back, really bad things are going to happen. I am of course dipping my toes somewhat trepidatiously into this novel, and the jury is still out on what the representation of physical differences is here, and I will let you guys know. On a slightly lighter question mark note, I have Will the Cat Eat My Eyeballs by Caitlin Doughty. This is further proof that my friends know me so very well. This was a gift from the lovely What Victoria Read for a launch of products in my Etsy shop that I had been working on for such a long time. For those of you who don't know, I run a shop called The Novel Menagerie. It has bookish ephemera, bookmarks and bookish based illustrations, etc. Enamel pins coming soon. And this was just, I worked so hard and this was just so nice to get. And I don't know, I think it says a lot about me that this is one of my favourite books that I've ever received. So for those of you who don't know, Caitlin Doughty also wrote When Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which was her memoir of becoming a crematory worker and a mortician, and how she got into the death industry and essentially what she thinks is wrong with the death industry in America. She really advocates a more personal approach to death and dying and a more natural way to bury our bodies afterwards, etc. So she wrote this one, and then she also wrote From Here to Eternity, which is another memoir of her travelling around the world and looking at death practices in lots of different places. But this one here is a like amalgamation of all of the weird questions that she has been asked on her YouTube channel, Ask a Mortician. It is all of the odd questions that people have about death, like when I die, will my cat eat my eyeballs if nobody finds me? Also, what happens to a body in the International Space Station if somebody dies? Like, what do they do with it? Will it stay okay in space? Not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna pair this one with the audiobook because Caitlin's narration is hilarious. If you have not listened to any of her videos, you absolutely need to. I have cackled my way through every one of her books so far, and I'm just so excited to get to this one. Now let's swerve right onto a thriller book that was absolutely influenced by Victoria. I was creeping on her Goodreads one day, as I do with all of my friends, it could be you, and I spotted this book which she had rated really highly and decided that I absolutely had to have it, and it is Girls with Sharp Sticks. Is this cover not just the perfect cover? And I'm going to read you the blurb for this one because I feel like I can't do it any better justice. It says, some of the prettiest flowers have the sharpest thorns. The girls of Innovations Academy are beautiful and well behaved. It says so on their report cards. Under the watchful gaze of their guardian, they receive a well-rounded education that promises to make them better. Obedient girls, free from arrogance or defiance, free from troublesome opinions or individual interests. But the girls' carefully controlled existence may not be quite what it appears. As Mina and her friends uncover the dark secrets of what's actually happening there and who they really are, the girls of Innovations Academy will learn to fight back. Suzanne Young also wrote the programme series, which several of my friends have absolutely raved about, but I haven't picked up yet, so I'm going to start with this one and see how I go. But it just... Let's stay on the thriller bandwagon for a little while, shall we? And I have two books here that I was sent from the wonderful people at Panmac. The first one that I've got is The Half-Sister by Sandy Jones. I haven't read any of Sandy Jones' other work. I am very excited. Tagline on the front says, her arrival will ruin everything, and I really, really hope that it does. The other thing that I'm really excited about this one is that it's about sisters, but it's not about sisters who are rivals. It's about Kate and Lauren, and the one thing that they have done all of their lives is have a regular weekend catch up where they have tea and they set the world to rights. It sounds perfect. It's everything that I ever dreamt of having a sister would be, and not, you know, stealing clothes and stealing scrunchies, and okay, that's as far as I got with it. I was a teenager in the 90s, okay? Scrunchies were important. But one day during their Sunday lunch, a knock on the door sends their entire world sideways because a girl turns up claiming to be their half-sister, which would mean, of course, that their dad has had an affair. However, as the fallout rocks their entire family and their mother is left completely devastated, these sisters realise that there is a little bit more going on than meets the eye. Sisters working together in a thriller, I will take that, check. The next one, on the other hand, might not end as well for the sisters. See what I did there? The sisters involved. This story by Michelle Francis is about Abby and Ellie, who are two sisters who have never been friends. They're now in their 30s. They've always been polar opposites, complete rivals, split down the middle in which parent that they prefer. But now they're in their 30s, they get a chance to go on a vacation together with the rest of their family, and they secretly think they might finally have the chance to bury the hatchet, except burying the hatchet, you know, is not a phrase in thrillers that I think is ever quite what you think it means. As tensions rise, Ellie starts to suspect that maybe her mother and her sister are more than just really, really close. Maybe they're hiding some secrets that could tear their entire world apart. I am hoping that this is a sister story along the lines of Karen Slaughter's sister stories, where they don't naturally get on, but in the end they find out that they actually love each other, and I just... Sisters and thrillers make me really happy. It's a trope I have realised that I love a whole lot. Although not if they just outright hate each other because both of them have boobs, because that is a trope in thrillers that can just go die now. 2020, get in the bin. The next book that I have got here is The War on Women by Sue Lloyd-Roberts. If you live in the UK, you might recognise Sue Lloyd-Roberts' name. This is her wonderful self. She was the first video reporter to report from different war zones, mostly on women's issues, on how wars were fought with women kind of swept to the sideline. Everything is traditionally about the troops, is about the men who are fighting these wars, who's in charge of these wars, the male politicians that's shaping these wars. And what Sue Lloyd-Roberts was more interested in was the female human side of these tragedies. She went everywhere. She went from Soviet Russia to China. She looked at horrible female genital mutilation to literally women who were left with nothing except prostitution after wars had ravaged their towns. She was amazing. Unfortunately, Sue died in 2015 just after she'd finished writing this, so Sarah Morris has compiled it, edited it and finished it for her. I am very, very excited to read this one. Speaking of reporters, I also have another one from PanMac that I need it in my life. This has got to get through this by Louis Theroux. I don't think it's even just a UK thing anymore. I think everybody around the world is obsessed with Louis Theroux. I love him to pieces. He is a very kind of offbeat, unusual journalist. He is a reporter who's done a lot of things, like most famously go to the Westboro Baptist Church and unveil that, but he's looked at Scientology. He's been so many places. He met the Tiger King before he was the Tiger King. He's just not what you expect from a journalist who gets so many results from questioning people to their faces. He is very awkward. He describes himself as gawky, and he's not always that good at making connections with people, but somehow this formula just works for amazing documentaries. And he has written this book about his experiences of becoming a journalist and going to all of these places, but also how maybe he's been using his journalism as a way to sort of stop getting to know himself and having to deal with his own stuff, which, hello, I think everybody can relate to. Yes, yes. Next up, I have a couple of books that don't really need very much of an introduction. The first one is Royal Assassin. This is the second book in the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb, which of course is part of the much larger realm of the Elderlings. I am dearly devoted to this and have been for many years. I loved it a couple of years ago when there was a big resurgence of these books on BookTube. They just make me so happy. I feel so at home. This is my favourite book in the first trilogy, and this is the illustrated edition. So throughout this whole thing, which has these stunning end papers, there are these stunning paintings by Magali Villeneuve, and I am just, I'm in love. I don't want to show too many of them because I don't want to spoil it. They are very sporadic through this, but I think it's fair to say that the illustrator shares my opinion on the relationship between Fitz and the Fool. These are 25th anniversary versions, so of course there is still the last one to come, but I think they're only illustrating the first trilogy, so I just had to get my hands on them. And next up we have Aurora Burning, which is the sequel to Aurora Rising by the amazing Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. They are a writing pair just for my heart. You may have noticed that in my last video, which was a catch up of how I got back into reading after my massive reading rut, that I mentioned that I had actually managed to get back into it by reading Illuminae, which is one of my favourite sci-fi series in the entire world. And this is another sci-fi series that they are writing. Of course, it's not Illuminae, it's not, my legs are numb, it's not mixed media, and it is strictly novel format with a very few pages like this in between with information about the systems and things about how the world works, but it is still fabulous. This is about Squad 312, who were formed in a very odd way. In this world, there are academies who take on youngsters up to like the age of 18 and they train them to be elite squads who fly through space. The reason is because in order to get from one end of the galaxy to the other in this world, you have to go into a thing that I think they call the fold, where time and space folds in on itself, and as you get older you are less tolerant of that and you can't handle that phenomenon in the way that it changes your perceptions of reality, and so only younger people are able to do it. Usually you are able to choose your own squad based on how good you are, and at the very start of this book This squad is essentially these scraps, what is left over after the choosing has happened. And the reason that they're left with scraps is because while they should have been choosing their crews, their commander was out saving Aurora. Aurora is a girl caught in time and space in a ship that was thought to have been lost many, many years before, and she is a catalyst, it turns out, for a lot of really crappy things that are now happening to them. I am very happy to be back in this world. I think I'm going to have to read the first one through again. Oh dear, what a hardship. Audiobooks of these are read by the same cast that read the Illuminate audiobooks. Just do it. Just do it. You won't be disappointed. Now, in my catch-up video, I mentioned that I was going to be starting Anything You Do Say by Gillian McAllister, and that I had somehow ended up with her entire backlist without having read a single book from her, and this just proves that I was telling the truth, guys. This is How to Disappear by Gillian McAllister, which is her most recent release, and I'm not gonna lie, when it turned up, I was a little bit tempted to start with this one. I'm gonna start with Anything You Do Say. I picked it, I'm gonna do it. However, the premise of this sounds absolutely amazing, and it's the reason that I've ended up with Gillian McAllister's backlist without actually having read any of her books, because it's very rare to me that I read a plot and just from a synopsis I'm like, that is a very individual thriller. There are a lot of sort of cookie cutter thrillers out there that we all wade through, and none of these books are that. This is about Lauren and her daughter Zara. Zara witnessed a horrendous crime and now has to be put in witness protection. Lauren is going to have to give up her husband, her entire life, everything that she knows. Is this giving you Still House Lake vibes? I hope it is, because it was giving me Still House Lake vibes, and I just, yes. However, in order to stay safe, they have to make sure that not one single thing goes on social media, not one like, not one accidental stalking of somebody's profile. But the thing that I love about this is it then says they can never assume anyone isn't watching or waiting. As Lauren will learn, disappearing is easy, staying hidden is harder. The next one that I picked up through sheer peer pressure. I'm not gonna lie. The internet told me repeatedly that I would like this book, and so I was like, okay, I will finally freaking pick it up, even though it's got one foot in literary fiction. This is Where the Crawdad Sing by Delia Owens. It has absolutely made the rounds on BookTube. Everybody who has read it has absolutely loved it and has apparently just thought of me. It is about Kaya Clark, who doesn't really integrate well with the rest of the town. She doesn't relate to people well, she doesn't like people, she doesn't trust people, and so she is nicknamed the Marsh Girl because she spends all of her time in the outback marshes and very little of her time in the town. However, when a dead body turns up on one of her stomping grounds, she is the immediate obvious suspect. She is then forced to interact with the rest of humanity, and two completely unexpected men wander across her path, and she is forced to realise that maybe living on her own is not the best plan for her going forward. I am scared, but I'm also looking forward to it because it sounds kind of gothic, like southern gothic, and quite creepy. So yeah, I am looking forward to it, but you know, literary fiction and Leanne. Now that is not all of the books that I have purchased. It really, really isn't. There's another tiny little pile on the floor. But there is a huge ton on my audio library and also in my Kindle. So I think that I might do another haul for you guys in a couple of weeks, you know, when you've got over this one and you're not cursing me for like filling up your wish lists and making you bankrupt too. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching this. My legs have not enjoyed this. I now need to get up and walk very, very far because otherwise I'm going to be stuck here forever. That Love Life Helen would have to hand me books. from the top shelves. As always, if you have read any of the books that I have hauled today, then please tell me about them in the comments, whether you liked them or whether you didn't. We like opinions here on this channel. And if you have any books to recommend me based on any of the books that I picked up here, hey, let me know, because now it turns out I have a lot of space on my wish list. I will be back very soon with the unhaul that caused all of these unsightly gaps on my bookcases behind me that forced me to buy all of these books to fill them. Until then, stay safe guys. I will speak to you soon. Bye! I was gonna say, like, you know what time it is, it's book putting away time, but also, like, they're already just on the haul shelf. I could just leave them there, right? It's a shelf. It's totally a shelf. I hate putting books away, don't make me do it.